honestly, I have tried to be positive when it comes to Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I don't dislike the studio. In fact, I really love the studio. It's Rocksteady, one of my favorite devs in the history of gaming. They made Batman Arkham City, one of my favorite games of all time, full stop. But I'm gonna call it like I see it, and frankly, when Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was revealed, it didn't have that same magical, dark grittiness of an intense narrative that Batman Arkham Knight or City or Asylum had. Instead, it felt like a game crafted from the ground up to satisfy an executive within Warner Brothers, not the gamers that actually buy the product. And over the last 2 years or so, we have seen a steady drip of information about this game, and every single time we've seen more, it has grown less exciting. Like, people get more and more burned out on it and start to mentally check out more and more and more, which is the opposite of what should happen. Shocker, as you release trailers, you'd expect your fans to get more excited for the release. But instead, with Suicide Squad, it's been the opposite. The more we see about this game, the less hyped people are, which is a big problem for Warner Brothers, who have invested hundreds of millions of dollars into this game and studio at this point. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I did a video on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, trying to give it a fair shake, but breaking down why I thought it was in some seriously bad trouble. A lot of this is tied up in terrible marketing choices where they are trying to frame the game as what it frankly is, which I appreciate the transparency, but the problem is gamers are just not interested in a live service action looter shooter that is coming from a development studio that we know is capable of putting together some amazing single player experiences. It just leaves a bad taste in our mouths and comes off as what it frankly is, which is a cash grab from executives forcing a single player expert studio to do a live service game. And so in that video, I break down why I think they need to approach things a little bit differently. If they want to get people relatively excited for this game, they need to come in and frame it differently. They need to change the perspective. Sorry, I just watched Ratatouille again for the first time in years with my little 2-year-old son, and Anton Ego is like one of my favorite characters in all of Disney history, and his whole speech about giving perspective I thought was brilliant. Anyway, basically what I said is that I think they need to reframe this as a narrative game where they're like, we're Rocksteady and we're all about focusing on the story, and that's what we do well, and that's what Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is. And they need to stop focusing on the part nobody's interested in, which is the looter shooter elements and frankly the gameplay, because every time we see gameplay and gunplay and traversal and stuff, the game looks worse and worse and worse. And interestingly enough, that is exactly what they did in this episode 1 of Suicide Squad Insider, which I guess is a thing that they've started doing now. And it is basically a breakdown of things that should excite you for the game. And it is their attempt to reframe this whole discussion, and instead of focusing on the gunplay and the live service elements, reframe it as what it should have been from the first place, which is a narrative game. But here's the important piece to understand with all of this. They are reframing the marketing approach because they had to. It was clear that if they sold this to players as a live action looter shooter, no one was going to be interested at all, and the game would flop day one. However, if they instead sell it to players as a narrative game that happens to have some live service elements, at the very least, you'll get a good number of people that are willing to give the game a chance. At its core, it's still the same game regardless of how you frame it, but in one situation nobody's interested in the game because you're selling it as a live service game, and in the other situation people are going to give it a chance because maybe, just maybe, the narrative is so good that it makes up for the live service crap. And that's something I want you to be aware of as we go through this little tidbit with some highlights that I'm going to do, because they're trying very, very hard to make you kind of forget that this is a live service game when it is. So don't get it twisted, don't get confused. This is still a live service looter shooter game, but every little bitty thing you're gonna see here would make you think it's not that. And if you don't believe me, just watch how they start this out. We're gonna start it at 0:00. We're starting at the very start, and just wait for how long it takes them to frame this as a narrative experience first and foremost, okay? Are you ready? Let's see. Let's count together.
Where are we going?
Okay.
And who are we killing?
Already cinematic. Okay, cool.
I'm Darius Sadigian, studio director at Rocksteady Studios. My name is Axel Rydby, and I'm the game director here.
Okay.
Eyes up, people. Let's go.
At Rocksteady, storytelling and character depth are the core DNA of our game.
Besides their names, it's the very first thing they say is that they are focused on storytelling, that it's core to their development process. Like, that is how they start this whole thing off. Like, again, word for word.
At Rocksteady, storytelling and character depth are the core DNA of our game.
At Rocksteady, storytelling and character depth are the core DNA of our game. So they're saying of our games, or of this game, like, is storytelling the core of this game, or is it a looter shooter? Like, which is it? I don't think it can be both. And this is where I just will warn people, like, you have to be cautious when you're watching like marketing campaign videos. These things are crafted by professionals who are very, very capable and very intelligent. And they're doing this to try and sell you on the product. So if they do like the most bare bones thing and then you just buy it hook, line, and sinker, it's just working. Like, you need to think about it critically, shocker, if you want to accurately interrogate reality. It's the same thing that happened back with Starfield, when I got so much crap for saying that the Creation Engine 2 was not actually a new engine. It was the Creation Engine just with a 2 slapped on it, so that fanboys would think that it was going to be totally different than what we had seen before. And no surprise to anybody with 2 brain cells to rub together, it didn't actually come off as a new engine. It had just as many problems. The same bugs that have been in their games for decades at this point were all still present, because again, if you thought about it critically, it was clear this was not a brand new engine. But some people want to be hyped so bad that they will buy in to any marketing narrative just because their favorite studio said it, or because it came from a Twitter account associated with a console that they like. And all I am trying to get people to do in these videos is to think for yourself. Think independent. Don't buy what the marketing team is telling you, hook, line, and sinker. Maybe it's true. Maybe when they say this is the most realistic realization of this in-game city ever crafted, maybe that's real and accurate, but you shouldn't just believe it simply because they said it. There needs to be evidence supporting the claim. A claim itself is not evidence of anything. It's just a claim, okay? I'm gonna pass out. Oh my God. Okay, moving on.
Twice the size of Gotham City in Arkham Knight.
This is something you're going to notice a lot with this video in particular. If you watch the whole thing through yourself, you'll notice it very, very clearly. But I want to point it out here, and that is that they also throw in constant references and mentions of Batman Arkham Knight, Arkham City, and Arkham Asylum. They want to make it very, very clear to people they are the same team that made those games. This is the same company that did that. So if you like those games, you should give this a shot. So they're trying to bring up that nostalgia to sell you on this as well. And if you go back and you look at previous marketing things they've done for the game up to this point, they have largely ignored references to those previous titles and instead tried to sell it as its own standalone thing. But now they're actually trying to actively bring that in just a minute and a half into this 20-minute reveal thing that they're doing. They're bringing it up, and they will do it time and time again throughout the course of this video, because again, they're trying to find ways to sell you on it. And what they know is a lot of people love the Arkham series. So let's bring that up and tie that back in here so that people associate the two together. And maybe, just maybe, we can get them to buy it, even though they were fans of a single player Batman like adventure combat game. Now we're going to sell them on a looter shooter live service game. They don't technically spill over, but they might be able to get you to buy into it if they can convince you that they're going to be similar because they came from the same company.
It's big, it's loud, it's a battlefield. It's a place built for verticality, mobility, the unique fusion of enhanced traversal, gunplay, and melee weapons, creating a supervillain empowerment that we think is a totally original gameplay experience.
This is something that they do constantly through this presentation as well, and that is to focus on traversal and movement. That seems to be one of the main selling points for this whole gameplay system that they've developed. And initially I was honestly confused as to why they were spending so much time focusing on traversal of all things, but then I realized it's because frankly there's just not a lot else to focus on. You know, in this case, you can talk about like gunplay, you can talk about those types of enemy generations or boss fights and things, but you run into problems regardless of which one of those you choose to engage with. If you talk about gunplay, people are going to get burnt out very quickly because, again, every time they've shown gunplay thus far, people have a negative reaction to it. So they don't want to do that. And instead, they're like, what other gameplay things can we show? Well, there's Traversal, so we can move around here. But notice they're just showing footage of you swinging through an empty city and, like, in this case, jumping towards some enemies. But the moment you actually start to approach the enemies, they cut away to just running around. Because again, every time they've shown any lick of combat, people are reminded that this is just a live service looter shooter and they mentally check out. It's why, honestly, it can be really, really fun to dig into these videos and ask yourself why they're showing some things and not others, why they're revealing some things and not others, why they're focusing on some and not others. And, you know, even then, there's still surprising things. Like if we just zoom into this little bit down here, look at how horrible that looks. Like, what are these textures? What is the, like, poly count on these objects off in the distance? Like, what are we doing? It's just insane in terms of consistency. Sometimes this game looks amazing, and other times it looks like a PS2 game. It's really, really weird. And if somebody thinks I'm being nitpicky with like looking at low poly or low quality textures and stuff, almost any instance of the game while they're playing it and running around, you can pause it and see textures that are not popping in properly. You can see models that aren't loading properly. I would be concerned about performance and technical quality here. Like if I just freeze frame, like right here, if we look at these few frames, you can see that we're swinging through, okay? But like, again, you can look at extremely low poly objects on the ground. You can see really fuzzy textures on the ground. And this isn't the max quality that they allow you to stream this video in. And like, it's just surprising at how muddy everything can look. In movement, motion blur does a lot to cover it up, sure, but this is, again, compressed. When you're playing natively, you're going to see all of this stuff very, very clearly. So I'm already concerned about the technical performance of the game, and it's not even out yet. Like this is already a concern for me, and that's not great. But after a few minutes of showcasing different cutscenes and showing some stuff, which honestly does look good. I think some of these segments they show with, like, for instance, this cutscene as they're going up the elevator and then exploring this little museum. This whole thing looks pretty good. I can see why you might play this with friends and stuff. It still is a little jarring to just have the Suicide Squad that each have their own like guns and everything is just focused on guns because, again, it's a looter shooter. But, you know, I could see how playing this could be interesting. At the end of the day, it's still the same structure of a game as Avengers or as like a Gotham Knights type game, if not a little more involved than Gotham Knights. Like, what is this? What are these textures, man? It's so inconsistent. I don't know if this is running on like a base PS5 on performance mode or what's going on, but the quality is so inconsistent here, I'll tell you what. But the point is, the cutscenes I think actually look pretty good, and they're very, very smart to highlight those front and center and make that the centerpiece of this reveal, because it's the one thing everybody can agree Rocksteady does really, really well. As the presentation goes on a little bit though, we do get to see a lot more combat. They start to show more of the traversal mixing with the combat, and honestly, it reminds me of like Sunset Overdrive mixed with Gotham Knights, mixed with like an Xbox 360 shooter. When the enemies die, they drop like ammo packs and shield packs that are big glowing orbs and stuff. I personally don't like the look of those floating orbs of ammo drops and shields. I think they look very, very outdated, and again, like a 360 game. That's just me. I will admit that though. That's not necessarily going to be the case for everybody, but whatever. And listen, this next part that I'm going to show you, it definitely can be construed as just like nitpicking. And I want to be clear, like, I'm not trying to nitpick with this stuff, but I think all of these little things that you might not even consciously be aware of add up into a pile of a bunch of little things. And that pile is going to shift the needle much more significantly than one of these little bitty things. Is a game going to be bad because it has low poly water bottles as you swing through the air? No, like that's really not that big of a deal. Is it going to be a terrible game because in some cases, like right here, there's horribly low quality textures on these brick walls and stuff? Like, no, that's not going to make or break a game. Does it look bad? Yeah, it looks really, really bad, but Is this going to be the difference between a game being like successful and failing? Honestly, no, it won't matter that much. But all of these little things stack up. And that's why I think it's fair to bring them up. They have to win us over to the point where we buy their game for $70. They don't start with that. They don't default to us giving them money. That's not how this should work. Like, even if you're a fanboy of whatever company or publisher or developer, whatever, you should never start with the assumption that you're going to just give them your money blindly because they did another thing you like. They should always have to work to convince you to buy their product. And that's why these things matter, because we can present them to you and then you can evaluate how big of a deal it is to you. It honestly might not be. What I wanted to show you here was this little bit with Boomerang. He runs up, he warps over. But I noticed one thing that just reminded me of the lack of attention to detail that is present in Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League compared to the Arkham games, which were known for amazing attention to detail in every facet of its design. And that is just with this stupid little hot tub here. You can see like this is supposed to be a hot tub on top of a roof at like a hotel or something. And then these people have been converted into Brainiac little NPC grunt enemies that you're supposed to kill. But as you run around and as this enemy goes into the water, there is no response by the water. Nothing happens. You see, he just kind of clips in. There's not even like a splash. There's no movement in the water. It's just a flat water texture basically. And the enemy just stands in there with no effect on the water whatsoever. And again, in movement, you might not notice it. If we rewind and play it, you can tell like it's not super noticeable. But these things add up. Like these little bitty things you will start to notice the more you play it. And in this case, when they're trying to sell you on the game and they're putting out these videos that are basically just ads, they're trying to blow past those little bitty things and focus instead on other things they think that will be more convincing and compelling to you. And again, the pool is a very small example of something that probably does not matter that much to 99.9% of players, but I think it reflects an overall lack of attention to detail that was present in their previous work that is almost entirely absent from this game, which is why it's disappointed so many people, because we expected the standard to be maintained from Arkham Knight to this game, because by the time this releases, it will have been almost 9 years from Batman Arkham Knight, a game which to this day still plays phenomenally well, still looks fantastic, and is technologically very, very impressive and seamless in terms of traversal and exploration. It's incredible to this day. And then we're talking about this, which a decade later, almost a decade later, is struggling to look like it belongs in this generation, much less an improvement over the previous thing that they did. And even little stuff like how empty the world feels. This is something we talked about on stream today. You notice as he swings around Metropolis, the whole city feels incredibly dead. There's some grunt enemies on the ground. There's nothing going on over here. It's all just blank space, extremely empty. There's nothing going on over here, nothing going on anywhere. Some grunt enemies down there, but there's just nothing. And in this little trailer thing that they did, they do explain why. They say, oh, there's no citizens or civilians in the city because Brainiac killed them all or converted them into these grunt enemies. Okay, they came up with a narrative excuse for why this is the case. That doesn't mean that it's okay, though, or that it's a good decision for a video game. Just because you can narratively justify something doesn't mean that it will make for a good video game. I said the same thing with Death Stranding back when that game came out. There is a narrative reason why there aren't animals running around outside, or why you don't actually speak to many humans when you're delivering packages. It's always like these awkward holograms and stuff. There is a narrative reason for that, but it doesn't mean that that was the best option. Speaking to actual humans would be more immersive, would be better than speaking to an awkward hologram that just kind of sits there and floats and is like, thank you, Sam Porter Bridges, for delivering this package. It's just a worse choice. Or in the case of animals, wildlife, whatever, not being present while you're out exploring, I understand why they narratively explained it away the way they did, but it does result in a world that feels very empty and dead compared to any other open world game that does have wildlife at play. So all of this to say, you can have a narratively justified design decision that's still a bad design decision as it pertains to a video game. And in this case, when we're talking about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, you have a big open world that feels dead because frankly everything is dead within it. And while yes, it's because Brainiac killed everybody, it doesn't really matter, because the perception of the player is going to be that the world is empty and dead and therefore not worth saving. And when the world isn't worth saving, why are you playing a game that tasks you with saving the world? Like this, as you're seeing it, is everything the game has to offer in terms of the open world. It's some big, beautiful buildings, sure, but try to play any open world game with all of the NPCs not present. Like it's gonna burn you out real quick. And also, I mean, this is another example of like the low poly models off in the distance. Then they start to come in, they start to pop in. It's a little better, but man, yeah, playing this on like a big TV or something, those things are going to be very, very noticeable. And maybe I'm just spoiled because I'm like making this video and looking at this on a big 48-inch monitor, but man, I'll tell you what, if I'm noticing it here compressed in video and stuff, playing the game natively, it's only going to be more egregious and obvious. Like these trees, come on, man. You guys did Batman Arkham Knight. Are you kidding me? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are these things? What are toes? What are trees, man? What are we doing? This is what's really heartbreaking, is that like this team is amazing. This team is very, very capable, or at least it was. And then to see the quality standard drop so far, to see them just abandon the attention to detail that they previously held so highly, it's just really, really frustrating and frankly disappointing. And that's still at the core of everybody that I think has seen this reveal and all of these other trailers, is just that this is an amazing studio that is frankly capable of a heck of a lot more than a big, bland, empty world that you shoot purple enemies in, and then you go and shoot purple weak points on tanks, and that's it. I mean, they say that the game really picks up and the game is really defined by the boss fights against the Justice League members, and maybe that is the case, but naturally they're not going to really want to show us too many of those fights before the game comes out, because I'm sure there's only like 7, 8, or 9 of them, and so they don't want to blow their load too early. They don't want to reveal too much. So they don't want to show the best part of the game before it comes out even. But as of right now, like every time we've seen the gameplay, the part of the game that you're going to spend the most time engaging with, it's less and less intriguing. And this showcase, frankly, didn't do anything to change my mind on that. Yeah, swinging as Harley looks like it could be fun for 2 seconds, but then you're going to realize, oh, I can swing through a city that's empty and dead to go and shoot purple enemies and hit purple weak points, and then pick up ammo drops and shield drops, and then rinse and repeat as I grind my guns up further and further, because again, this is a looter shooter. This is a live service game. This is about keeping you engaged for dozens, if not hundreds of hours. And it's not about the best world design. It's not about the narrative. It is about keeping you engaged for long periods of time, because again, it is a live service game. And that, I think, is perhaps very, very important to remember, is that this, as a live service game, is meant to keep you engaged for years, not just for a 20-hour run of the campaign. This has been designed for you to stay playing it through 2025 and into 2026. That's their goal with this. So if you're looking at it and saying, I mean, I could see playing it over a weekend to get through the story, but I don't really think I'll play too much of it. That for them is a failure. That for them is the worst thing you could say, other than I'm just not going to buy it at all. Because this is supposed to be something you engage with long term. And frankly, nothing they've shown has made me go, oh yeah, I could see myself spending a lot of time engaging with that. Everything I've seen is like, I'd want to stop playing this as quickly as I started. And that's basically the whole video. It's just showcasing it as a narrative game with some cool traversal. And then it just kind of ends after showing a little bit of combat. They are trying desperately not to show the live service elements, not to show you the battle pass elements, not to show you the gun customization, because that has been roundly ridiculed by everybody. But the moment you go to their website, you can see Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, whatever website this is. It's like suicidesquadgame.com or whatever. And you can order or pre-order the full game, get classic outfits and rogue outfits on PS5 digital only, because PlayStation paid for some exclusive stuff. And then what's included in the deluxe version, the full game, Justice League outfits. So I guess you can put them in different outfits while you fight them. 3 Black Mask Notorious weapons. So I guess just weapon skins, I suppose, because they've said that guns won't, or the DLC and purchasable items won't affect gameplay, I guess. Squad Gold's weapon dolls. I'm guessing like in Call of Duty, you can put the little trinkets on the weapon. Maybe that's what they're referring to there. I'm not sure. 1 Battle Pass token, so you can get 1 free Battle Pass. No shade color swatches, digital only. And then pre-order bonuses, 72-hour early access, classic outfits and rogue outfits, again PS5 only. Oh my god, and this is delightful. Read this little part right here. If you're listening to the video, I encourage you to open up your phone and look at the screen right now. Look at this. Warner Brother Games may modify or discontinue online services with reasonable notice at any time. That, if that's not a red flag, I don't frankly know what is. They are putting on the pre-order page a statement saying they're allowed to discontinue support for their online services at any time. Bear in mind, this is an always online game. You have to be connected to the internet to play it at all, which is wild. So they're saying they can discontinue online services, including like battle pass plans and extra DLC that they announced or something. They can cancel all of that if the game does really, really poorly, and you can't complain because it's on the website. This also means that additional playable characters that are supposed to be available post-launch, they can be canceled and you can't complain about it. They can just back out of that, even though they're saying in the FAQ that they will support it. You can just get out of it if the game is received poorly. This is actually very similar to what Redfall is dealing with right now, because Redfall promised more playable characters as well, but it was received so terribly they had to spend all their time focusing on fixing it, which they're sort of doing. And now they're saying that 2024 is when they'll bring the first playable character addition to the game, which I'll believe it when I see it. But that's the same thing with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. They're able to come in and back out of all of that stuff at any time, and you can't say anything because, again, when you pre-ordered it or when you bought it, they made you agree that at any time they can back out of that stuff without consequence. And other stuff that they've added to the FAQ, such as, you know, asking for specific versions of the game. So they say the PlayStation 5 and Series X will run and target 60 frames. PC will just do whatever your PC can basically handle. And this could explain why we're seeing some of the scaling and texture pop-in issues that we are seeing, because they're targeting 60, whereas like Arkham Knight only targeted 30. So that could very well be part of the problem. But beyond this, you see all sorts of other stuff. New content is planned. They're going to have a battle pass after launch, multiple battle passes, of course. They have at least 4 seasons that they've talked about so far directly. So at least 4 are on the docket and schedule. And then in-game purchases, they describe that. They say, no, it won't have loot boxes, but instead battle passes, and basically take the Marvel's Avengers approach to monetization. And listen, like I think that they are actively doing the thing I suggested that they do if they want to stand a chance of winning some people over, which is to reframe this whole thing as a narrative experience that has a live service component to it, but it's still a narrative, and that's what it is focused on. And that's what they've started doing, and I think they are finding some moderate success with some people. Some people are saying, ooh, actually the game looks pretty good now. I'm actually pretty interested. So for some people, it's clearly worked. But at the core, at the end of the day, this is still the same live service game we've been bashing since it was announced. Nothing has changed. They're just changing how they market it and sell it to you. Nobody, as far as I'm aware, has played the game yet, and maybe it is the case that when you play it, it is just honestly so fun. It is like one of the best live service games ever because it's so fun and cinematic, and the story's cool, so it ends up just being an amazing amalgamation of all of it. But we won't know that until people play it. I fully don't expect to get to play it, to be completely honest. At this point, I would not blame them if they didn't invite me to the events. I would love to. You know what? If I went to the event and I ended up being convinced and I told everybody, actually, guys, I was wrong, it's amazing, that would mean a lot more than some Joe Schmo, you know, that goes and checks it out. But like, again, I wouldn't be surprised if they they like, no, do not invite Luke. Jesus Christ. But again, the point is, we don't know how the game will actually play until we've played it. Of course, the developers are telling us that it's amazing because that's literally their job, is to sell you this game. That's what the marketing team's job is to sell this game to you. And so we have to wait until we have independent confirmation of that and evidence pointing one way or another. Honestly, at this point, I'm a little weirded out that we have not seen gameplay preview events or anything like that, and instead it's only been very carefully organized gameplay reveals like this. Maybe they've given access to like IGN to the game, but you guys, I'm sure, can figure out how much weight I would put on that. So I don't know. I, again, would love to be convinced of this. I would love to be won over, but frankly, at this point, there's just not enough evidence in favor of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League to make me think that this is going to sort of buck the expectations that we all have levied against it at this point. It has such a bad reputation and a stank around it. They have to do a whole heck of a lot to win me over and win all of you over, I'm sure. And that's why even this video is still being mass downvoted on YouTube. People are just frankly not buying it. And I'm sure there's some people who will play this and will have a good time. I've spoken to a few people on stream today that said they thought it actually looked pretty good after this, and they will give it a shot, in which case the marketing team did a great job and they are starting to win some people back over. But to me, it just seems like a brand new bow and some bright red lipstick put on the same pig that we've been looking at for 2 years now. It's no different. It's just a little prettier now. But again, I'd love to be convinced otherwise. Rocksteady, Warner Brothers, hit me up, baby. I'm available. But you know what? With that, I'm going to call it. My voice is going out. Thank you for watching. Those of you who have been present on this channel know that this has been quite the week for the Stevens household. So I just want to say thank you to all of you guys who watch, subscribe, support everything that I do, watch the live streams or the live channel where we post all the highlights and stuff, or follow me on like TikTok and those places. You guys are all amazing. You make my dreams a reality. And yes, even though sometimes the dreams can have elements of nightmares intermixed, it all still is an actual dream come true. So just thank you. And the support after what happened on Monday has been overwhelming. And you guys continue to humble me every single day. So truly, truly thank you. And if you made it this far in the video, I am truly grateful. So thank you. I don't know what else. Do you want some money? Do you want some cash? I don't know. What do I do to say thank you? I don't know. But okay, I'm going to call it there. Thank you for watching. I love you all dearly, and I'll see you in the next video. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.